Good afternoon, everyone. I am your Toastmaster today. I'm Tyler Smith. This is ME 4611. Our first question is going to be for Davis. It's about a recent article in the New York Times technology page, has to do with the FTC. Question is, the FTC released a report stating that internet-connected devices are poorly protected. However, the preventative measures are high in cost, and the FTC has no real authority to enforce the regulations. If you were in charge of an affected company, what would you do?
Well, if I was in charge of an affected company for this, I would certainly at least try to enforce as many regulations as were feasible, and I can still turn a profit, because of course the privacy of the customer is what's most important, especially today as electronics are becoming more and more kind of like a personal diary. I feel that it should be as protected as well as possible. Though, if those regulations exceed our budget and we start losing a profit because of it, there would have to be some sacrifices made, in order to continue making a profit.
How are we up to?
1 minute.
1 minute. All right. So let's say you make a profit, but you're not making as much profit as you're hoping for. Would you budge then, or are you going to stick to your ethical guidelines and not going to?
I would stick to my ethical guidelines. Just as a person, I feel that that privacy should be protected. As long as it's enough that I can continue to pay for my employees and continue running the company, should be enough.
Very, very strong moral ground from Davis. Our next question is going to be for John. This has to do with a global company that sends employees all over the world and recently was affected by a tragedy in France, and they were discussing having an app on the phone that would actually allow them to track their employees and make sure they're safe. Should employers be able to track their employees via apps at all times, only in emergency situations, or never? And why?
I believe it'd be great in emergency situations, such as if there was a terrorist attack, everybody would know where their employees are. I feel like all the time would be a little overkill, as some companies would, you have a kind of a creepy boss and kind of want to peek in to see what you're doing.
How would you be able to? What if someone's response to that was, how would you know for certain the employer isn't abusing that privilege? If they can track you, what would stop them from tracking you at all times?
Well, I believe there should be some sort of preventative measure, like they can track inside a certain radius or only at certain time frames. And not like 2 in the morning when you're out, sleeping or eating or something like that.
That's good.
We have a whole another minute left.
Whole another minute. All right. Could you make an argument for the other side? Could you make an argument why someone devil's advocate argument?
Well, I believe it would also be good if an employee was abusing his privileges at work, and maybe going out and spending a little too much free time on the job instead of working and saying they are where they actually are.
Sounds good. We're going to go with that. Great work, John. Next up, and finally, is going to be Eric. This has to do with something I'm sure we've all heard a lot about. A drone recently crashed on the south lawn of the White House. It's a pretty big deal because it obviously could have been dangerous. It wasn't in this scenario, but due to its size, it was said to have been mistaken for a large bird on radar. If you were in charge, Eric, how would you ensure that situations like this would be prevented in the future?
Well, drones are fairly new technology, so nowadays there isn't a whole lot of precedent to go back on. So with the White House and other areas like the White House that need to be secure, there needs to be a lot stricter measurement in place in terms of keeping things that aren't supposed to be in the air, out of the air around the area. I mean, we obviously all remember September 11, 2001, and even with something as small as a drone, people nowadays are finding ways to fit other technologies on there. So who's to say that somebody can't put, for example, a gun on a drone, fly it over the White House and shoot at the president or something like that?
1 minute.
All right. Do you think drones, perhaps, even in the DC area at all, should just have a no-fly, not allowed to be used by the public in order to ensure the safety, since there's a lot of national security issues there?
Well, don't get me wrong, drones have a lot of beneficial uses. Like, for example, I'm minoring in geography, and one of the things that is a hot topic there is that drones are being used to monitor crops. So you can take a drone overhead and visually inspect the crops and see, all right, these are healthy, these are getting diseased. So there shouldn't be any full restriction on drones, but in high security areas, such as, say, within a 5-mile radius of the White House, then yes, that needs to be blocked.
Sounds good. Excellent answers from all of our participants today. How do we wrap this up? That's all for today on The Experiment.